Hi there, I'm here with Simon Hall and we're doing a series on Mortimer Glorium. Simon, I was hoping you can show us a little bit about these dice. Some people might come and say, oh, it's a gimmick dice, it's just a six-sided dice with different pictures. But in my experience it's not that at all. Can you just explain how these dice work and what you thought behind them?
Yeah, I mean I tried when I was playing to get lots of different things out of normal dice. So there's a limitation to what you can do with a six-sided dice without applying a lot of maths or a lot of contingent things. The second thing I knew is I'd started doing something with colour, and colour's a very easy thing for us to deal with. It's easy to spot. I'm a bit colourblind, but even for me they're very easy to spot the difference, and it's an easy thing to remember. You know, we work with colour quite well. So I started playing around saying, well, what can I create that's not a gimmick? It's not a six-sided dice just with symbols on it, so you're paying a lot of money for symbols. It's actually a system. And I thought to myself, well, I actually want a system which actually creates two things at once. First of all, I want a system that creates the damage, but automatically builds in some special effects on the same dice.
Okay. And you want everything on the dice rather than
off the dice. So you read everything off the dice. So the principle is everything gets read off the dice. Now to do that, well, for this type of game and all types of games, there's usually the scores you have on the D6 and something special, if you like, where it's suppression in World War II or something here in Ancients. So I created the idea of having the dice having two types of symbols on them, not one. So a six-sided dice only has one type of symbol. It's got 1 to 6 dots that you use for damage or whatever, the numbers. This has got damage symbols, which are the skulls and the crosses, and an S, which stands for special. Okay. So first of all, the idea was to integrate the two things into one dice. So it's a dual-purpose dice now that's doing two separate things. I then wanted to get a special type of curve for the type of damage I wanted to create. So in my mind I said, okay, first of all, if it's equal, whatever you're doing, the fight should be volatile. It should be risky and wild. So I start by saying, okay, so we need a version where head-to-head it's going to have that profile. That creates for you the green dice.
Okay.
Because the green dice is the first dice that's got a skull on, which is big damage.
Yes. Okay.
That's small damage. And that's it. So when this combat, that against that is highly volatile. Because you can get a range of, you can get that to that all the way to that the other way.
So that's a wide-ranging dice. Anything could happen.
Anything can happen. So if you're going to go and risk yourself with battles that basically fights that are basically even, expect volatility. Okay. Unpredictable result. So that pegs the first bit of it. Then I said to myself, okay, at what point in my system do I believe people have got a serious advantage, and therefore should almost certainly win? I said, okay.
It's charging in the flank with some...
Well, it's less than that actually in the system, but that would do it on its own. Yeah, we'll do it on its own with the factors. So, and I concluded that in the way I was doing it, 3 up actually represented that. These dice. So I said, right, I'm going to put the red dice there.
And then for people who are watching, a 3 up would be you have 3 levels of advantage.
Exactly,
over
3 levels of advantage over another person. So maybe you've got better weapon, better arm, better quality. All 3 together. This is now a big advantage. You should expect to win that. It should be rare that you lose that fight. So I said, right, for that one I want the red dice, and the red dice has got 2 skulls on it. Okay. So it's got twice the probability of a skull, and it's going to be up against a white dice, which has no skull in it and lots of blanks. Yeah. So that pegs the next one. And I want that one to be a big improvement on that one. Okay, so that's your 2 ends. That's your 2 ends, okay. Then I want one in the middle, which is better than green, but nowhere near as big a step as to red. Okay. So that's one. So you're on your way to a big advantage, but you haven't really got to big advantage. You've gone a bit better than just than the volatile. Than the advantage. The first advantage from that one, I need another dice to do it really. Yeah, I have one here, one I produced earlier. Need another one. So your first step wants to be big, because your first step wants to be I have an advantage. Okay. So no advantage to advantage, big increase. Yes. Advantage to big advantage, big increase. Yes. Okay. Lower increase. Okay, so we've got a shape of a curve that's doing this. Yes. And it's very deliberate. Okay. Okay. And then if you're disadvantaged, and if you keep going with more dice, let's see what I've got here. I can do that one and that one. If you're disadvantaged, it reverses. So it's going the other way. So you're the opposite of that.
Mm.
So again, now I can keep those in camera like that. That's in the middle. There's a big disadvantage there.
Okay.
So this curve was set up so that you get the big step there. So it looks like that.
Okay.
See?
Sort of an elongated S.
In elongated S. And it's deliberate. It's completely deliberate. And it took me quite a while to figure out the profile of dice that would allow me to do that. And then the black is super weak. So if you get to massively advantage, the very best you can get to,
That's where you're getting absolutely.
I'd have to reach way off the table. You're now getting obliterated. The very best roll you can get is that, a double red against a black. This one has a 1 in 6 chance of doing any damage at all. Every one of these has a 2 in 6 chance of doing a skull.
Okay.
And there's no blanks. The worst it can get is an S.
And that's elite troops charging you in the rear
That's
against a bunch of peasants.
Exactly. Anything like that's going to do that. Lance arm knights charging something in the flank
Okay.
will very often end up with something close to that.
Right. I see.
And there's some grading because we can combine that red dice with any one of 3. So actually, the curve continues because you start with a red and a white versus the black, then a red and a green, then a red and ultimately a double red. And that's
So a lot of the game is around trying to maneuver to get just that advantage over.
Yep.
And it's whether it's the type of troop against an appropriate enemy or whether it's
or
how you hit
circumstance.
them.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's all about advantage. So your 2 guiding principles for this are advantage green versus white, good. Lots of that. That's the fundamentals of what you want. Find where you can get reds because they're super powerful. Okay, and that's the fundamental of the game. So if you're playing with high quality troops, you have to optimise that. If you're playing a very weak army, what you'll be relying on is a lot more troops.
Okay.
So the fact that the quantity will pay back, and even in that level, they may have 4 bases, you may have 9. So even though on average they're doing twice the damage you are,
Okay.
you can still soak it up. So there's all that. And then the final twist is shooting. Shooting, what do you want shooting to be? You don't want shooting to be spectacular and random, you want it to be attritional. So the shooting starts using the white dice, because the white dice actually doesn't have any skulls on it, so it's attritional.
Okay.
You will gradually rack up wounds, so normal shooting is attritional. And it's a great example of using the S. The S for shooting is slowing effective fire, because it's a new concept invented for the rules. And if you look at history and read history, when you're being shot at and bombarded by arrows, the first thing it does is slow you down a lot.
Yeah, it's all holding
By
up your shields.
and filling in where the casualties are dropping. And
So
that's
your
the classic
shooters
argument.
really need to work together with your combat troops.
Yes.
Almost in a supporting role, which they were. They weren't the mainstay
Indeed.
of the
Unless they're very good shooters, that's a very tidy target, in which case you'll get upgraded to green and all of a sudden it gets horribly dangerous.
I did go up against a bunch of Numidian
Yes.
elite light horse archers, which were something along those lines.
They'd be javelin men, you mean the mounted javelin. So actually going back in history, they were probably the favourite mercenary addition to an army in that particular area, and they were renowned for being really, really dangerous.
No.
And I've never found a rule set that represented that, but this does, because we classify them as skilled shooters, which gives them an upgrade.
And
So
suddenly
they throw
become
javelins,
real
and
wound
suddenly they become
causes.
real wound causes and base loss causes, and can actually do some quite dramatic stuff. You get the same thing if you shoot a target that's got no armour at all, it's unprotected.
Okay.
They're vulnerable to shooting. So you get the right target, you can start using the better dice, but mainly it's a lot of attritional S effects and the slowing down effect on the enemy, which again feels extremely
So
realistic.
even if you're playing Asian Core, you can't just rely on archers and nothing else.
Well, no, as you call it, your archers will probably do it because they're finding a nice target for themselves with the longbows. So you'll actually get quite a lot of green dice to fire at as you go, which will cause a lot of, more than the damage, it'll cause a lot of slowing.
Okay, so once you've upped your advantage to the level of green, your archers actually become an offensive
actually
weapon.
a destructive weapon rather than a attritional weapon.
Okay.
But most importantly with Agicor, if you play Agicor, you put lots of knights in quite deep, you'll find they won't destroy the knights initially, but the problem knights will have is they'll get slowed down a lot by the chaos.
And of course,
So
if
then you
they're
get more
charging
shots.
through difficult terrain and such,
Exactly.
it's going to be okay.
So the Agincourt game, if you play the Agincourt game, feels right because the knights find it difficult to get through all their bow fire on average, and that creates just the volume of fire because they went slowly, they got stuck. causes the problem. You know?
Okay,
And if you,
and I imagine, I know, although we're not dealing with that right now, but as your lines start to waver and break and you start losing your support, it causes chaos in the army.
it
So-
would, yeah. And the other thing that's true with this, the shooting effect is, you will find that the slowing effect of fire plays quite a big effect on the game, and even brings skirmishers to life.
Mm,
So your typical skirmisher wasn't a super destructive weapon, it was a screen and an irritant. Okay, and that's what you'll find it'll be, unless it will do some damage, and it will get in the way a little bit, but they're always forced back by heavy troops, so they don't become a sort of dominating killer force
Yes, yes.
in their own right. They're the secondary thing in most battles, except for the few armies that use them as a major force, like the Numidians or the Parthians, who would use them to sweep around everybody. When if you're skilled at using them, you can get a lot out of them. But the essence, going back to the dice system, is it isn't a gimmick. It's actually a quite cleverly designed system that you can only do easily this way. I can create it for you on D6 and give you a table
And
to allow you to do it,
chart
and I can watch your brain explode. Okay? Because there's all sorts of contingent things I'd have to do on it, you know. So I'd have to say, okay, if you're rolling a D6 for a black, a 1 to 4 is nothing, a 5 is that, a 6 is that.
And you've got to
And
constantly
you get up
check
and you're constantly having to write. So it can be done using a D6, but your brain will explode. And the point of this is, the minute you roll the dice, you're off.
You see what's
you've seen
on the
it,
dice,
you
and
know. I
you
mean,
do what
basically,
it says.
you roll those head to head against each other. Oh my goodness, we've killed the base of theirs. He's done a half base damage in ours, and we bring these little marks in. Fight done. Bang.
So your chart is actually built into your dice.
Exactly. So the chart is, the damage is effectively built into the dice. The only thing you've got to figure out is what dice you're using against each other, which is very easy, because that requires very few factors. It's all addition. There's no contingencies.
Once you've designed your army, you know
You know,
what the factors
yeah,
are going
you've only got 3 or 4 troop types.
Yeah.
So, but then you know what they're going to be against different types of enemies. So most people hardly ever have to look at their QRS. Actually.
Yes.
You know, there's a big QRS sheet with everything on it, but
that's to cater every army for a period of
3,000 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we go to that, if we look at one of those charts and we put it on, well, there's lots of factors. Your Roman army only has 2 of them, or 3 of them
So
typically
you don't
applying.
have to worry about
The other
those.
15 are nothing to do with you.
So it's
It's
more
just
about
watching what the enemy's
to
got.
help you design your army, but once it's there and you know what it is,
Yeah.
it's all on there.
So yeah, so everybody think of this as a system. It's quite carefully designed as a system with a a big drop there, rise there, and then a sort of escalating S that keeps going all the way up to horrible things that are all the way up there. So
Yeah.
it's,
Okay.
but that's a very carefully designed concept that took me quite a long time to get to. It looks like it's easy now, it's there.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
for instance, when I tried it originally, I only had 4 colours of dice.
Can't quite get
I
the S
couldn't-
curve
I
with
could-
4 dice.
I couldn't get the curve I wanted,
Yeah.
basically. I just
Okay.
couldn't get the curve I wanted, you know. So,
That's very interesting.
so there you go. So I hope that's interesting to everybody to see what the origins of it are. And these are not gimmick dice where they're just D6 with symbols on. They're actually a true core play aid for the game.
It comes with the box set with the rules and everything you need.
It does.
So,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Pleasure.